Okay, up and running. There you go. Okay, so water, drink water. The irony, I start the stream every time and I rarely have water. So yesterday we added the oh, I needed that. Just trying to do the screen. I think some people still do use the team advertisements as actual navigation. Okay. I gotta get myself more centered in there. I gotta get my chair somewhere. Preferences. That's what I'm going to do today. Preferences. So yesterday we got the preferences loading up to the front end, so we were able to get the time zone offset hours. So today we're going to pick up another ticket. I've got multiple windows open for this here. Yeah. So basically now with the API endpoint in place, we can tackle this one. And then, okay, that's cleaned up. Just trying to make sure I clean branches up once I've used them because I don't want to leave a mess. But the goal for today's stream will just be to add a few more features here and there and keep moving forward with the project. So, and yeah, close that one down. Close that one down. That one. Let's stay on this one. Okay, so we have a bunch of issues. Preferences not loading when the existing preferences does not load the existing preference when showing the screen. So this is when we load up here. We go to preferences, we don't see our target, right? Not seeing how much water we've consumed, etc., is another thing. We'll do that in a bit. I kind of wanted to leave that open a little bit, but we do have an endpoint for getting the progress. We just don't have an endpoint. We don't have any visuals for that yet. And now the preferences, being able to set and save, get that will be useful. But we have more than the target fluid ounces. We do have the time zone. So I think it's reasonable to implement that as a whole. Because when this was done, we only had fluid ounces, but now when we've added that extra piece, you know, we've got those preferences there. We should display them and save them. So as we added time zone offset to the preferences, since this was done, we should also load this preference. Display options for selecting time zone. I'm just going to note that that's what we're going to do, right? Because that's this is going to head. So now let's go over here, create a branch. That just pop up and then go away. Preferences does not load. let's make it a little bit cleaner. Feature 1 preferences loading in screen. I don't want to open the branch, but that's okay. Okay, there we go. So we created a branch. Let's put that to in progress. We don't have any milestones, so not worried about that. Doing it that way means that when the branch closes, this will close and it cleans everything up. Go here and fetch. And now we can do feature checkout. Okay, so we have an endpoint for preferences. We have a get endpoint, which will literally just return the preferences back up. Our preferences comes from our repository, and our repository loads our right now it's in consumption. Get preferences. This is something we need to discuss. It's something we need to talk about, naming conventions, organization, but that is deliberately. I'm not deliberately being bad. I'm just making sure I'm not over analyzing too soon, and I'm doing things that I would probably do if I was thinking about things really fast and just dumping them in places without actually considering organization. But that is because I think that this is a useful project for tinkering with for anyone working with software. Just checking on the dogs. For anyone joining, if you've not been in here before, you're more than welcome to ask a question. You know, the stream is not just about me coding. The stream is about growing from this project. I'm trying not to be as opinionated about it as I would be normally, so that I can let things loose and talk about it more and give more options for people to actually work on the project, rather than me pile in, write a load of code, try and add in more advanced design and make it super intimidating. I'm trying not to do that, but in the same, if I want people to join in, then I've got to do something to get people to join in. We're going to come back around on that one afterwards. I think we've got some chances to do some integration testing with the API using these techniques. Okay, so we need on the UI to get that thing, right? So right now the UI is just using an API. It's not directly hooked into this code. It's a layer on top, and it calls the API. Right, so when we get preferences, we load preferences back, and yeah. Now it does share the view models, I believe. Right, so it does have access to this, I do believe. He says with confidence. That's saving the preferences. No, it doesn't. No, I don't believe it does right now. So we have an option. We can use the view models library. Which I don't think is a bad way, because I mean it is for the view models, so it does give us that ability to consume the same model. We should just be more careful about how we're promoting how we're using those objects later. Let's move that out there. So save preferences right now we'll call save preferences on the user service. Obviously we have this this UI. We don't have the ability to get preferences, right? So in our user service now, we probably want to introduce get preferences. So public async task of preferences view model. Let's see if yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think it's okay to accept that library. I don't see any major harm with doing it that way. Because all it is a library with models that are just data, right? There's no behavior in there. There's nothing in there we need to worry about. We know why we're the user requesting this, so we don't need to worry about that on this side. We're going to have to add the authorization token. That's fine. Authenticated, authenticate. We have to put some work into the validation of the token because the token is not perfect. Basically, if there's a token there, you'll be classed as logged in, but then when you go to make a request, it will error. So let's try that as an issue. Token validation is not need token validation. No. App shows logged in even when I don't have a user. This begin to applicate create an initial user, login application. This is a UI concern as well. Projects, water. Log into application, delete database, stop application, delete database, restart application, UI will show logged in because there is a token. Token is invalid. So we probably need a, I'm going to leave it like that. Probably need some sort of callback to validate the token. Okay, so in here, we're going to do seems redundant, but we're going to do it for right a second. And we need to add the header in there. No. Okay, that works. Var response equals if response is not. Ah, hold on. That's because that's getting, of course, yeah. I'm just used to doing the get and then doing but get from JSON async makes sense. I mean, if it's bad, that's going to return. I hope that's going to return null. Yeah, it will return null, which is okay. Okay, so let's override protected. On initialized async, I'm going to do private preferences view model preferences get set. because the class is named that. We'll just call that current for right now. Current equals await user service dot get preferences. Sync, do that, and then in here, if current is not null, so that's our target fluid ounces. Right now, I'm just going to make that a bit more readable. Row. This is going to be time zone. The model is time zone offset hours. So we don't, in this case, we don't need to necessarily represent that as time zone offset hours in the UI, because that's not really what we're going to make them select a time zone, which is going to be backed by current. So there's a challenge here in that I need to make sure that that is, I don't want that to be, I want it to be defaulted. And that's going to be new preferences view model. I always want there to be a preferences view model available, basically, because then what I'll do is I'll feed that. I want to feed those values in there. I don't want to feed the same model because it's a view model. I don't want to use a view model as a data transfer object, because then if my requirement for data transfer changes, then I'm going to change my view model, which is going to start telling lies in my code. So I do want to keep those two concepts separate. We're not doing anything with save preferences is what it's doing. Remove the unused. Really sure that's there. I don't want that there now. I want that there. That's not going to be permanent. That's okay. Preferences, time zone, and target fluid analysis. That should load though. Yeah. Oh, that failed. That's why. Application. Let's make sure we have a test.test.com. Bob. Then I'll make test.test.com Bob. Okay, let's do this. So if we delete that and rerun it, it'll recreate the database. It will migrate the database, so we'll have a fresh database. We can then go in here and create a test account, right? So test at nowhere.com, test, right? So we can just run that. That will work. Now we can go here and test at nowhere.com. Test. There you go. Okay, we're going to go to preferences and set 128, 127, that'll do. Save that. We're only saving fluid ounces right now, so that's not. So we go back there now. So we're not getting an error, which I okay with. We're also not setting this value. So let's go here and see if we get in there. Okay, we do. Step in. Or not. Get preferences. Try that once more. Okay. Have a token. So we're getting back null. So let's go and get that once more. Actually, let's just go get the token. Bring up our developer tools, application. Grab that token. Value. Why has that got quotes in it again? Pretty sure that shouldn't have quotes. Let's validate that. Network preferences. Oh, look at this database. Water, drink water, tables, preferences. Target fluid ounce is 0. So could actually be returning correctly. Let's make sure we capture. Oh, I know why. I know why. Because we didn't remove all of what we had there. So I'm using these new values, right? But I'm sending this value, so we don't need this value anymore, right? So let's do that one, right? We'll worry about the time zone in a minute because we've obviously got to do more there. So we start up, go to preferences. We didn't capture anything, so let's do 128. Save. I go back. There's 128. Okay, so we know that's loading. We saw that load before. You can see it in the background hitting the endpoint. We go back here, go back there. You can see the endpoint being hit. So that's loading the preferences every time. Progress. Okay. Now let's talk about the time zone. Ultimately, we want a list of values that are going to be, they're not really going to move very often. And they are going to I always set that. That's fine. We don't need that. Let's go get a list of time zone values. Time zone list with offset hours. Right. CSV. Download time zone database. Time zone. So this is kind of what we want, right? That's in minutes. Time start, GMT offset, daylight savings. I'm not going to install these in the database. I'm going to make them client side. I think. I don't think I want to necessarily just jam these all in the database because it's just not. I don't think that's necessarily the best thing to do because I don't need. I mean, for what we need this converted to hours and this, right? Let's have a look. Hey, Dota. Quiet chat, yeah? No one in at all? YouTube or Twitch? So, how's it going? Okay, so maybe I want to rethink that. Why are they repeating? Whoa, what does that mean? Abbreviation, time start, GMT offset, DST. I'm playing Valentine's Day. The challenge again is just projects. As much as I want to do something like this, I don't think this project is necessarily what people really care about on Twitch. But they had a good Valentine's Day, Joe. What you doing for Valentine's Day, brother? Nothing. Well, I have an excuse for Valentine's Day. Well, my wife and I don't really do very much for it, but my wife's birthday is in February and our anniversary is in February. So, yeah. It's only been a couple. Okay. I've got a little bit more time there. 18 years of marriage. So, yeah. Yep. So maybe that's a little bit. Okay, so this is more what I want. It's just friendlier. I just want the raw values. I don't need UTC minus because I've got to parse it. Unless I can treat that way. Can I do that with the time zone? So if I can take program. My sisters are at like 10 years. Yeah. Var date equals new date time. Actually, date time now. Date dot. How do I even do this? No, I can't do. There's nothing I can read that is that. .NET parse. Yeah, because all I'm after there is the number. But this is more about what I want. I'm either going to make a playlist of music, a playlist of coding characters, not sure which one motivates me more. You feel really energetic about either of them things? That's because that's kind of what I go with. I'm like, okay, do you feel energetic about it? Yeah. Yeah. Then I'd go with the music playlist because you'll be more engaged. The coding characters as well. If you actually follow that path down, you could end up in a distraction because you could end up actually trying to do coding characters. Because as you make a list, you'll find coding characters that you haven't done or things that you want to do. And you're like, oh, I'll do this. And you'll get distracted. And teaching coding characters at work. Okay. How's that going? Okay, so this is in order of actual time. It rolls in with the least amount of motivation. Hi, Canny. How you doing? A lot of them. Oh. Know that. Okay. I'm a geek. Good afternoon. So actually, on that topic of developers and stuff, right? So yesterday I saw a post from Milan on YouTube. I want to see if I can find it because it kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. See if we go to his channel, community. Here we go. So here's what he says. Why bad developers fail. Read the task description, don't spend any time thinking, start writing code, run into a wall, ask Stack Overflow, ChatGPT for help, find a solution to try, copy and paste code, get stuck again, delete everything, start from scratch, ask for help. How successful developers solve problems. Read the task description, brainstorm possible solutions, pen and paper, whiteboard, pick one of the solutions, write the code, write the test, refactor, optimize. I disagree with that entirely. I think that is a horrible generalization of developers. Most developers work that way, from my experience, right? But they interact with this. All he's saying is there's more structure to the actual path a better developer takes. But I don't think... Okay, he uses the word bad and successful, right? Why not unsuccessful? Well, sometimes this is what it takes to figure out something, right? And a lot of developers are taught to do this because it's the quickest way forward. But if you're working in an environment that is pushing you to just get things done, this is how you're going to learn because you don't have the time to do this. No one cares about these pieces, right? If you're not in an environment that cares about this stuff, right? But even in even more experienced, right? There's times when, so right now, for example, I've been tasked with getting Lambda expressions up and running in AWS. I don't have access to AWS, but I've got to get it working. So how do I do that? Pen and paper and whiteboard isn't going to solve my problem, right? Stack Overflow, ChatGPT, writing code, running into the wall, that's going to help. That's going to get my problem solved because it's the only path I have, right? So I don't believe this is a very good generalization of it's not a bad developer that does this stuff. It's a developer that doesn't have the resources or the training necessary to be able to do these things. And more often it's the time, right? So a lot of developers don't get to do a lot of this stuff. So when they've got people in their organizations that do this sort of stuff and can introduce it, it's 10 times harder for you to get that through if the organization is more obliged to just get stuff done. So I dislike this generalization, bad versus successful. So that rubbed me up the wrong way yesterday. I feel that's a if someone who's less experienced, someone who's a little less confident reads that and they do that, all that top stuff because they have to, because they don't know any better, they consider themselves bad. They think they're the bad programmer. So yeah, bad versus successful is not a good measure. So, like I said, the law of Demeter, however you want to pronounce it, that's a great thing to hold, and it will happen a lot, right? Because sometimes you're just thinking about that code and you're not thinking about that necessary behavior. Yeah. Oh, and I've seen a lot more of it in game programming. Oh, I can access that through that, or I can get that there. Okay, we'll get that there. Bearcosp, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome. If you violate law demands in the code, it's an absolute mess. You're telling me to grab CRC cards to refactor. I'm going to grab this list, it's more practical. And then we're going to do this. When it's locally in one module and the rest is fine, you have localized mess. That's not right. That's formatted wrong, and it's wrong. I think the reality is very few software developers are able to look at design and make those sorts of calls. Whether they should or not, well, that depends on how the system's architected. I would bet you find more code bases that break it than do respect it. Because sometimes that pragmatism wins over everything, right? And getting something done is unnecessarily focused on. I mean, I agree. Clean code is much better to maintain. It's much easier to work with. But some developers just aren't going to get stuck in that paralysis of, oh, well, like you said, Kenny, I've added a second dot. CRC cards. Class responsibility collaboration cards. Oh, you're putting modeling around stuff. Brainstorming tool using the... But again, so much is not object-oriented in modern software. It's not really object orientation. Enrollment transcript student. Yeah, I mean, okay. Hi, Judicus. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that the way that we write the code, if you look at most of the classes in this, not necessarily, but if you look at most of the classes in my platform stuff, they're not really object oriented. They're functional. And they're wrapped up in a class because that's the organization of behavior. I tried once a reactive way to program things to document that. Was horrible. Yeah. The controller service repository has OOP principles also. Again, I'd kind of, if you're talking about modeling, they're not modeled. They're not representing something in the classic sense of a model. How's things, Apex? So I get it. I get why organizing the code and the whole. Yeah, I don't know. It's that's the sort of thing you could get stuck in for a very long time. Yeah. I don't know why I'm worried about that one because that's not going to be an input. It's going to be a selection in a second. So for those joining, I am working on adding the time zone preferences to the actual screen. Hold that down. I knew what I meant. And if you're working in fresh software, if you're working in brand new software, some of those things are easy to do. But sometimes when you're adding functionality in, and that's kind of why I'm developing this application the way I am, is I'm not really thinking about it because I want to make some of those poor decisions, because then I can reflect back on them and explain why. And there's at least one example in here already of just why you shouldn't do this, right? I haven't used UI for preferences. I'm just looking at time zone stuff. I haven't used any modeling techniques or designs or things like that because it's just not something I've learned as I've gone through. So CRC cards is not something that I've ever gone through the practice of, and it's something that maybe I would if I was in a large organization or working with a group of people that understood what that meant. But I don't see. There's definite. So, yeah, absolutely. If people can get on board with it and people understand it and follow through and don't, because if something like that, if you introduce something like that, it becomes more of a yet another thing you have to do, then you can lose your audience and they just don't do it, or they do it poorly, which is worse than not doing it. There's two different things there, right? If you're writing new software, your design, your analysis as a focused on clean code, focused on organization, focused on maintainability, readability, again, that code base can evolve differently. There's going to be mistakes in there. There's going to be things that you kind of code yourself into because you can't avoid it, because you don't see it ahead of time. And the measure of a code base is how quickly you can go and change that after the fact. But if you're working in legacy code, the act of working in legacy code, or we always, legacy code is normally bad code, right? Technically, legacy is something I wrote a month ago or whatever, because it's old code that I don't touch necessarily. But normally when we're talking about legacy systems, we're talking about older systems developed with poor practices or developed, in such a way. Refactoring them is infinitely harder. Pulling those things apart and trying to redesign them is extremely difficult. So the practices you use for those sorts of things will break some of those things as well, right? I personally prefer the approach of kind of pulling things up into, like trying to break those dependencies, pull things up into like services and kind of group them together by general functionality so I can start to test them and then break them out further and gain understanding. But what it means is in the interim, I'm developing probably more what you might consider bad code. So the practices of approaching a legacy system are different than if I'm developing from scratch. What am I doing here? This list is not what I want. It's way too, I'd have to pass too much, so that's not, it's probably more accurate, but I don't really need that. Yeah. And like, give me the actual list. Morning, Amal. Good morning. How are you doing? And that comes from a world of let's see what it gives us. Okay, that gives us what we need. Yeah, that gives us what we need. Okay, because all we need is this value. So what we're going to do is we're going to do select ID equals time zone. Find. Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that. That's perfectly fine. Thank you. I should just use this in the first place. Something tells me that's not an uncommon solution. UTC. My work is finally at the place where it's not a stress fest. I think the biggest reason for that is how fast PRs are opened and closed. Yeah, well, I was not. Yeah. Yeah, 1 second. Let's just there's a more readable version of this. Standard name, display daylight name, display name. That's not. That's not what the display name is, though, is it? That's showing a very different value than that. Standard name. Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Okay, so that's what we're going to pick. Total hours is going to be the actual number, so that's fine. Now we just need to store that. And post preferences does not store that, so I think it's fair to make this change in this case because we know this behavior is necessary. I'm not going to play around with yet another story. The preferences. I'm not going to create a. I'm not going to create some sort of elaborate model, anything like that right now. Hey, I'm curious. Why Kafka? Been looking into stuff about systems like Kafka, RabbitMQ, etc. Message me. Hi, Tabgul. Why Kafka? Okay, so my apologies for leaving it on the. I should reflect the tags properly, but this project, no Kafka. This project is not using Kafka. This project is a simpler project built to help with reference. This project is my main project. So this is a project. So I work on Water Drink Water 2 days a week, and then I work on this project for the rest of the week. So the unfortunate fact is I can't save a set of tags, so I probably left Kafka tagged on there. So my apologies if that's kind of a bait. Ultimately, why Kafka in this project is because of the disconnected nature of it, right? So the way I'm using Kafka, so this is my Agile project management tool. I stream this Wednesday to Friday. This is very much built in a it's not microservices, but it is a more modular architecture. So the idea is that these components of the system have their own data, and they share that data through Kafka. So if I'm creating tickets and I'm creating data and I'm doing metrics and stuff like that, all that data can flow through Kafka and be picked up by systems that care about it, right? So I can use, if I'm creating tenants right now in this version, when a tenant is created, it publishes an event, and that event is consumed over here. Over here in the tickets, because now the tickets now need to know about the tenant, they need to know about users and things like that. So it's not, tenants as a system does not need to care that tickets exists. So Kafka is perfect for that sort of thing because they can just distribute tenant, and then any system that cares about it can pick it up. If I was going through for a message bus, so something like mass transit or in service bus, then I might be more, hey, this exists, or I'm publishing an event, and you have to have subscribers to those events, etc. Whereas with Kafka, it's a little bit more flexible. So I kind of like it for producing data where I might not care about the data, but the data is there anyway. For logging, streaming logs, which is actually what Kafka was built for, it's perfect because you can just put information in there and systems can consume that information. But if you've not worked on something that is more distributed in its nature, then Kafka might not make a lot of sense. So, yeah. Yeah, my apologies for the... I was probably making Water Drink Water seem very overcomplicated because you're like, why is Kafka coming into this? It's just a basic UI and some information. Yeah, I can... my apologies for that one. You know, for this one, Kafka wouldn't make sense, right? Because Kafka is a lot more heavyweight. There is some distributed stuff, but it's usually not so much message queues and more a lot of separate HTTP APIs, but I'm trying to navigate all more event-driven stuff. Gotcha. So, draw.io this, open existing diagram, rambling stuff. So for me, this is a random diagram. This is not an organized thing, right? So right now, the way this platform is going to work is tickets are customer support tickets. They're coming in, etc. Planning items are when a ticket or when an item needs more review and needs more planning, then it becomes a planning item. So a ticket can become a planning item. A planning item can start. When a ticket becomes a planning item, there's a promotion piece. Tickets and planning items are separate systems. Currently there is an API here, right? With that API, I now have kind of a dependency, right? It's very hard to manage. So I either have to queue things on this side, kind of an outbox pattern on here, so that if this is not available, when these fail because this API is unavailable, I have to build in a lot of infrastructure to deal with that myself, right? If I disconnect this and put Service Bus or Kafka in place, that really decouples these two systems. So now they're independently deployable, because now this will do its job. It says, hey, here's some data. And whoever cares, cares. The planning item picks that up, right? So event-driven stuff is really not something that I would say I'm an expert in. I think I've got some experience in doing this at this point, but I definitely wouldn't say I'm an expert, because if you look at most examples of Kafka or etc., what you'll find is there's a vagueness to them, right? Everyone talks about events, but they don't tell you what events are exactly, because I think events are kind of very much an interpretation. For me, when I have a tenant, if I change that tenant, I publish a tenant, and the action that triggered it is kind of the thing that created the event that the tenant was necessary for. But to the rest of the system, it's just tenant, right? So, tenant changed is essentially the event you're inferring there. We need to remove that internal API from there. yeah, I do. But right now, I think my focus is shifting a little bit to more planning items. So, and good day, yes, sir. My apologies. I was hoping you're okay. I haven't seen you in a little while. Meanwhile, Azure Service Bus, RabbitMQ, these systems are very depending on your needs. Yeah, it's difficult. I'm figuring out how you'd want to handle systems going away and not breaking eventual consistency. So yeah, to kind of wrap my head around that whole idea. Eventual consistency is a very difficult concept. Users do not get eventual consistency. There's a whole lot of challenges around who knows what when. I'm of the mindset that as long as there's a single source of truth and you're not changing that data in any consuming system. So if I have a tenant and I publish tenant, thanks, Ezra. If I publish a tenant and this consumes a tenant, that information is only read only, right? It's just for the sake of making sure this system can produce the data it needs. And actually, I'm about to experiment with a different way of doing this entirely, where this layer consumes that data. These layers don't really consume the data unless they absolutely need to. So the view would never come off these. But that's all a different concept. Yeah, it's definitely something that is not easy. This platform is my own. I'm going to build this. I am, as you can probably tell, I've done a little bit of development in this. There's a lot of pieces. This is an internal API. This is the piece that S is mentioning. You can, you're more than welcome to hang out and ask questions. Again, today is not about this one. But you're more than welcome to hang out and ask questions. And when I stream this stuff, I'm not streaming it to actually make that much progress on it. Thank you very much for the follow time goal. I'm streaming it to help. Hey, here's the system I'm building. If there's questions, if there's thoughts, opinions, it's more of an interactive piece anyway. So whenever I'm streaming, I'm never trying to be productive. I'm more about the actual code and learning and growth. So yeah, there's a Discord if you're interested. We do have actually quite some conversations that have been going on regarding story pointing. So I'll get back to this one, but yeah, more than welcome to talk about this stuff. So for going back on that, this project is a much simpler project, right? This project is aimed at being a bit more beginner friendly. It's going to look more intimidating. The more code we add, the more the features grow. It's going to get a little bit harder to read, but the idea is that it should be very simple to follow. We can look at architecture, designs, patterns, etc. as we go. We can reflect back on stuff, and that's the point of attending the streams, is it kind of supplements it. All the code is available for this project in Water Drink Water. This is an app to track water consumption. I am very bad at remembering to to drink water during the day. So unless it's right in front of me and it's the only drink I have, then I tend to reach for the coffee or something. Yeah, a coffee reminder application. Coffee, drink coffee. Yeah. So, it's so this app definitely is one that wouldn't benefit from a more distributed architecture, because it just is simpler all around. The data requirements, the user requirements. Time on a hose safety desk. I find the waterproofing of the equipment is the hardest part there. So let's add this in. Again, this is not perfect, but we're literally gonna tack this in. And I'm doing this because it's just more pragmatic to do this right this second. We will come back around on this, I promise. As to why what I just did is not really the most stunning approach. Oh, it's snowing. I just looked at my cameras outside and it's snow on the ground. Awesome. I'm sure it won't get you. Okay, so let's go back to the UI. Let's save this. So we're going to save that time zone offset hours. Current dot time zone offset hours. Let's go in here. Int time zone offset hours. And this is just an anonymous object. I don't necessarily need to. This all serialized properly. So my bet is this should work. Between all the lakes, it's not going to be fun. Does not implement. Ooh, did not implement the right thing. The challenge of changing an interface and not actually changing the code. Time zone offset hours. That's that one, and then preferences start. That's my list. Okay, so we go here. Set our time zone. York. Save. Go back. There's the downside. Remember that part where I said, no, we don't need to store the actual time zone. I believe that somebody did call that out yesterday, right? And I said, no, it's fine. We just need the time. We just need the hours. How confusing is Indiana? Do they really have 6 time zones? Well, you called it out, and I did dismiss it, and I have seen time before, right? So I did know that there were time zones because I actually said it. I actually said that yes, there's some that have different daylight savings times. So we did discuss it. We definitely understood why we were talking about it, even if we didn't think about it as explicitly. So I've got 2 options here. I could remove this and do a distinct on the time, right? Because for this application, does this really make a difference? So this is actually a discussion point, right? If you're building this application, and this is open to everybody, right? You have an opinion, you're more than welcome to offer it. If you're building this application right now, right? Let's say it's going to be a real application. We only care about the time zone offset so that we're recording the water consumption that we have in the correct format. Do we care if we're off by an hour here or there when a time zone changes? Or do we just care about the distinct hour offsets? So group by, hold on. Yeah, but there's still, even the standard name is not going to give us, it's going to give us different values. I still want to know why this gives me a different value than, so we could group by this. Bonsoir. Hi Moonbeam Twitch, welcome. Hope you're well. So if you're building this application, right? I think the right answer is to store the time zone. Use the ID and store that. But then we have to pull that. Yeah, that's what it did. It just picked the first one that came in the list that was -5 there. So it definitely stored the value, right? We can definitely say with certainty if we go and look at the database. He says, yeah, time zone offset hours -5, right? So for anyone new to the stream, anyone joining the stream for the first time, we are building an application, or we have been building an application on Mondays and Tuesdays that is meant to be aimed at being a little simpler for everyone to pick up. It's fully open source. It's the sort of application where if you want to contribute to, you can do. If you want to learn from, you can do. If you want to make a UI for it because you like using React and you don't have a really good use case for an API, we'll provide an API for you. So it's aimed at being a friendly application overall. It does mean that for the stream, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, opinions on what is going on, you can express them. The only things I don't like is you're doing that wrong. Because that's not productive, right? If you want to contribute, then, hey, can I ask this? Or, hey, this is incorrect because of this, so we can all learn, right? That's the purpose. Whiteberg, good morning. Hope you're well. I mean, creating a time zone from that ID to get it offset is not that bad. Sure, it's a bit more data stored, but meh. Yeah, I'm not opposed to saving it. I think the right thing to do is save the ID. But that means when we load up this, he's trolling contributing. Morning, buddy. Chris Jones gets away with it all the time. I don't think he does anything but troll, so yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, so it's kind of does break our design a little bit. But this is software development, right? This is, hey, I've chosen a path. Oh, the path was wrong. What do we do now? And that's the measure, right? I could hack solution after solution in here, or I can go back and change this to be more appropriate. I think that's the right way. So we built some software around this, right? We built our service around this. So if we go to our application service, our consumption service pulls our preferences and it uses our time zone offset hours, which we're storing. Yeah. If we hack this in, then it's not really going to be a good example. It's also something we can fix, right? We should take the time to do it, because if we do it now, then it's fixed and we don't have to concern ourselves with it again. It won't take that long. I would bet that, the rest of the stream, but even that might be a... So what do I need to do? I need to, instead of time zone offset hours in here, I need to store the time zone ID. I could still store the hours, but the problem with that is if the time zone changes, daylight savings, etc., that time zone offset is going to be off. Although, no, it's the right. So we store the ID instead of that. Then when we pull this out, we go and get the time zone from the time zone ID, right? Because we can get, I'll assume that if we have this, we can do time zone info dot run get system time zones, find system time zone by ID, dot base UC offset dot dump. Yeah, -7, I saw it. Right, so if we store the ID, then we will be able to get the time zone just by doing that. Yes, India has half hours as well. Yeah. Hyderabad in India is 9.5 hours ahead of us. Okay, so let's make the change. Again, I think it's the right thing to do. I think we benefit by making this change. Thank you for the follow, Malik 7000. Hope you're well. Yeah, Newfoundland. The island is 30 minutes ahead or behind. It's in a direction. Okay. We are all more knowledgeable now. Okay. Okay, so let's break the application. So again, it's not add time zone, offset hours to preferences. Update UI for preferences. I'm going to commit it here because it's a good point, even if it's wrong, and then I don't have to worry about unwinding things here. And I can revert if I get stuck. Now, by the way, how will you handle the migration? Will you delete the old one and create a new one with the new data? Or do you want to go about it like it's a brand new migration that worries about existing data? I want to delete, because there's no existing data. At this point in the application development, we should not be concerned with users, right? There's a certain, once you go to production with an application, every change you make to your data structure should be a concern like that, right? What does it mean to change this data out? Do I lose something? And that will often cause problems with your code base, right? Because fear to change, fear to remove is often a blocking point for developers. So let's say I have an application out in the wild right now, and I've actually stored that -5, and now I need to make a time zone ID. The simplest thing is to just drop it and recapture that, right? But obviously my customers might have it already set. So now I need to go and figure out, okay, well, what do I do? Right? Just wanted to know if you were going to go with the whole exercise of how that would look. No, I'm not going to tackle it for now, because I think the practical approach is to delete for right this second. But post release of an application, we will often go through steps that we need to go through, or not, right? But sometimes we're scared to change things. We're scared to deprecate things because it might be needed, or we might lose something or whatever. So it's definitely something you want to talk about when you're doing this sort of thing. Is, okay, well, I need to introduce a column. What am I fixing? How do I migrate customers? You've got to consider that when you do it. So, but again, you shouldn't be afraid to remove it. So I'm going to remove this column. I'm going to wipe it out and replace it. It's going to break the code for quite a while, but it's in the best interest of the code, because then the code is not full of mixed design. And that's how code becomes difficult over time. Is you're like, oh well, what if that breaks? Oh, and you get defensive over it, and you start adding in those pieces on top of what you've got rather than replacing what you have, which is the right way to do it. So, and I have done this in scenarios bigger than just working with a SQL-like database. So it's not something I'm talking completely out of inexperience for. So the preferences, show fluid ounce and time zone. Time zone. I don't need an extra commit there, because I'm gonna basically wipe out this commit later. I'm just using it for the historical tracking. Okay, so let's go and break things. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my models. I'm going to go to consumption. No, I'm going to go to preferences. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to put in public string time. What's it referred to as? Time system time zone by ID. Time zone ID. Right? It is a string. And our repositories are now going to be broken all over the place, right? Our preferences UML is going to be broken. So I need the application to compile to be able to actually make this migration work. So I've got to change everything out. So I'm going to go with the simplest possible thing, which is not to fight that and leave that as an empty value, right? So now, again, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. One of these days, I'm going to watch this stream without any interruptions. You do know I put them all on YouTube, so if you want to watch them, although I suppose if you want to ask questions, it's kind of too late after the fact. But no, I do use Discord. Sorry, just checking on the dogs. Okay. So all I'm doing right now is I'm going to remove all the fields that are going to break my build, so that I can do the migration. And then we'll piece it back in. It being live is part of the fun. So we're going to do an add migration, and this is going to be called retirement, or in my case, unemployment. I best get moving because I want to retire when I'm 50. And I'm about 20 years away from being able to retire, and I'm almost 50. So, well, I'm 44. I'll be 44. That's just pretty much close to almost 50. So this platform thing best work out. We're gonna do drop time offset save time zone ID. Okay, so that's going to be our migration. That should build and add a migration for us. An operation with scaffolding that may result in the loss of data. Please review the migration for accuracy. Good call. Now we're going to update our database and run that migration. They'll probably tell me again data was lost or whatever. No, I just did it. Okay, so now if we go back to the water drink water DB and go to our preferences, we have a time zone ID. Okay. Cool. Okay. So now let's go and add in all the pieces where we just broke. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the preferences view model, and I'm going to drop this off. This was the part I was thinking about. You could have done delete migration with the old one and create a new one. Okay. No, I'm just, again, from a tracking perspective, I've now got a history of that migration. I know it's going to add a field and then remove a field straight away, but yeah. Sorry. I could have reversed I could have undone the previous migration and applied a new migration. True. Yeah. That is worth saying. You know, obviously this is Twitch. Ads do play. So now I'm going to break the application a bit more. So by deleting that field, that's going to tell me all the places that this touches, right? So there's a way of doing this actually that actually doesn't break this, right? If I do this, and I do public string time zone ID, and instead of this being a get set, if I do time zone info dot convert system time zone, find time zone by ID, time zone ID. I wonder if that's, hold on, is that default? What is UTC? The time zone. UTC, okay, so we can do that. Dot base offset the hours. You can actually maintain compatibility, not break everything. We'll only break the sets of this. And we'll see how that goes. Okay. So again, this doesn't matter. Our time zone ID is UTC. Okay, Junicus, thank you very much for hanging out. Thank you for everything as always. And I'm sure you'll see the commits for this later on. And in the client side, we'll worry about that afterwards. Again, if anyone's got questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, You're more than welcome to contribute. There is no right or wrong here. This is a project for the stream. So if you want to say, hey, I don't think that's the right way to do this, I've done this before, educate me. I'm okay with learning something new, right? I've been a developer for a while, but it doesn't mean I know everything, and I'm always open to that possibility. That sounds arrogant. I'm always open to learning new things, is what I mean. So if there's a new technique, if there's a pattern that I don't follow, if there's something that you think that I would benefit from, then it's okay to call that out. The only thing I don't like is just being told I'm wrong for no reason. Okay, so this can't be bound, which is okay, because we're going to save the time zone ID in there. This is going to now store .id. So our user service now needs to work a little bit different, because it now needs to save that time zone ID, and this is a string now. What's it breaking on there? There you go. Save preferences, time zone ID. Okay, so save preferences here. Takes that. Go. Now on the server side, we go to preferences and go to post. We now need time zone ID. Right, because that again is going to be what we save. We don't care about the offset hours at this point. All we care about is the ID. And set preferences again. Am I being inconsistent now in doing that? You gotta figure that out. Certain things like time zone or things like abbreviations and stuff that I will often do inconsistently. I'll either capitalize them or I'll not capitalize them. So it's something that I worry about. iConsumption repository, so this is going to be string time zone ID. And then iConsumption repository itself needs to change to store time zone ID. Time zone ID equals time zone ID. I think I've been consistent there in lowercase, uppercase. Build. Let's see if we're breaking it. So again, I don't think this is a necessarily harmful thing to do. I think this is the right thing to do to refactor this now. We can maintain the readability by keeping those that field on the view model and leaving that calculation there. So then we don't have to keep doing that every time. Oh, get the time zone, do the thing. Right. We do have some unit tests. Let's see if these still pass. They should do, but you know, you've got to make sure. That's application test. Let's run all the tests. Yep, all our tests still pass. So none of this was affected by that. This all functions as expected. Awesome. Interesting though that get logs for today. It uses the offset hours, so this is going to use the hours anyway, right? So in the consumption service, because we did get preferences and then we use time zone offset hours, that is now calculated off the time zone ID. So from this perspective, it's transparent. So the behavior, the unit tests, etc., still pass because that's still being provided by that preferences object. It just is -5. So, and the one unit test is verifying that with a number passed in, and the other unit test is passing that as is. So that is all good. Okay, so we should be able to run and save that. Okay, so if we go and save, okay, that errored. Let's see if it'll let me save it before I, because it might just be that it was null, right? Where are you? Helps if I'm looking at the right time zone, right? Yeah, that didn't load. That didn't load properly. Yeah, so it's erroring. It is erroring because delta fetch. So if we go over here, get that 401 unauthorized. Okay. Oh, I deleted it. No, I didn't delete the database, did I? Let's validate that again. Delete key. Refresh that. And then test at nowhere.com test. Okay. Refresh the UI. Obviously got some works there. Okay, so that's doing something. Video Patrick, how's it going? Me? It's okay. It's okay. We're making some progress on the water app. Just putting time zone selection in so we can capture data correctly. That posted time zone ID America, New York. So if we go to the database now, I think that was a side effect of not having a time zone. So we might have to do some extra work there. America, New York. So now if we refresh, reload, go back in there, it should be America, New York. Why are you not actually selecting that? Preferences, response, time zone ID is null. Okay, so we're not loading the time zone down again. Okay, good to know. So in our endpoint for preferences, we call get and we return get preferences. Get preferences here gets these preferences. And get preferences implementation. Can you store all times as UTC and also detect default time zone from browser or the date time object? Yes. So we are storing all times as UTC, which is kind of why we're doing the time zone thing, right? So all logs are stored as UTC. So we have tests around using making sure that we're getting the current user's time zone and converting it. Right now, I'm just making a select a time zone. This is again completely open to other people's. So storing in the preferences means that not every request for that information has to get it. That can be manipulated based upon where the user is. Auto detect default time zone. So yeah, we could auto detect for certain. Testing that'll be a little bit harder. So right now I'm just storing it. So but that's again why we're doing this, right? So we're doing it in an implementation. There are other options for implementation, and we kind of, it's not uncommon to go into an application and see what time zone, set your time zone, right? Otherwise, all the information in there is off. So we could do it this way, but I'd be definitely open to different ways of doing it. Because messing around my date time on my computer at the same time would be a bit challenging. So this, again, is something that if anyone has any ideas on how to do that or how to verify that, that would be an interesting diversion. So again, the point of this project is very much one of, hey, here's a way of doing it. If you think you want to do something different, or you want to do a PR, or you feel there's something worth demonstrating, you can take this code base, make that modification in a fork, and do a PR, or even just come into the stream and say, hey, can you review this change set in my fork and see how you feel about this, right? That is a perfectly acceptable way of doing this thing. And that's not just to you, Radio Patrick, that's to everybody who's watching, because the point of the project is very much one of growth. And this also gives us a common understanding of something, a domain, a simple domain. So why doesn't get preferences work? Well, get preferences doesn't work because I'm not pulling it down again, right? So time zone ID equals preferences dot time zone ID. First or default. Why would that be? If you pull from date time, you can change the locale for the date time class and modifier. Yeah, you can also use a time provider now. Time provider is so we've used the time provider so when dealing with the time zone, right, you can now use the fake time provider, so you can control that definitely more. Maybe I'll look at that tonight on stream. Absolutely. So you can fake this stuff now in .NET 8. But yeah, you're more than welcome to it. Like last week, Rambling Geek was actually streaming and picked up Water Drink Water on stream and actually contributed the README. So now we have a bit more of a clear getting started guide on how to get the actual project out. So I'm split between actual programming or doing like 7 billion humors or something. Well, I wouldn't complain if you were going to do some coding, you know, if it was doing that sort of stuff. But yeah. Okay, that's a bit of a cleaner way of doing that one. Let's do that there. So that can't be null. No, it can't be null. I said it can't be null. So that's a waste of time. So that doing that coming from a time before C# supported nullable. So my practices are still very much rooted in the old way of doing things. So I have to think about what nullability means sometimes. Yes, it got left in it. That was a good touch. I like that one. It's a nice little. You must be thirsty after all that. Drink water. I have so many things I'm actively trying to do. This is the way things are. So I have a dog that is currently crying. I'm gonna have to give him a minute, but time zone ID was not found on the local computer. Excuse you, what? Okay, so it's snowing outside. Hey, Prophets, how's it going? It's snowing outside. If I go and get him now, he's going to stand in the doorway and go, I'm not going out there. So, what time is it? Okay, I will be right back. But I gotta tend to him. I'll be right back. Is that change? Okay, sorry about that. Dogs saw snow, they were okay. Dogs saw a garbage truck, practically ripped my arms off trying to get back into the house. So we're going to give it a few minutes. Okay, so why... Let's try that again and try and understand why that time zone failed. So when I go to preferences, we get an exception. The time zone ID, America/New York, was not found on the local computer. So if we go to LinkPad over here and paste that in there, I bet it's right. Nope. Time zone ID was not found on the local computer. Okay. I think we'll have to disagree on that one. I didn't solve this issue, but I have a workaround for this scenario. Find the list. What? Come on. So now I have to validate an ID that I pulled from an object that Microsoft provided. You might want to look into Noda time and abandon time zone info altogether. That was, I mean, that's 13 years ago. But still. Oh. Oh. I have a suspicion. Hold on. If I do that, I think what's happening is it's not the server. Yeah. It's the client translation of that code needing to do the same thing. Ugh. So that works because now I'm not trying to do this. On the server, that's fine. On the client, it's not fine. And this is being translated to WASM. So when it says it can't translate on the server, I think it means on here it can't do it. That's why I was looking at that then and seeing a lot of Blazor comments. And then it dawned on me that I'm not in the world I'd normally be in. All right. I'm in a WebAssembly. We go here to preferences because he is selecting correctly. Go back. Yeah. So that's perfectly valid. Come back. There you go. Okay. So essentially, get init and then Assumption repository get time zone. Then we're going to do equals references dot. Then we do time zone info. That won't do that. That won't give me the. Okay, so that now set that. Let's see anywhere else that's affected. I don't think it should be. We should be able to use unit test still. Let's pass our tests. Okay, all our tests still pass. The tests are not necessarily a great validation that the system is in good order at this point. The unit tests that are in there are not meant to be comprehensive. I'm not taking this application from a unit testing or test-driven first perspective because, again, I do want it to be friendly to people coming into programming or be able to pick something up and tinker with something without having to worry about all this infrastructure, etc. So that's kind of what I'm focused on. You know, if you are a new developer, if you are a beginner that is interested in doing, is interested in looking at what I'm doing here, you're more than welcome to reach out. You're more than welcome to go onto Discord. And I did create a beginner-friendly channel in Discord that I will monitor specifically for if there's things that you want questions for, answered for, or you know, I will definitely manage that channel. So that should now function correctly because we're not calculating that field now. We're actually setting the value. So when we go to preferences, really? Oh, because you still got to create an instance of the preferences. Hold on. Why is this code tripping it up? No, so WASM builds the entire thing down there? That doesn't make sense. Huh. I mean, that's valid. That is 100% valid. That's frustrating. Because it doesn't matter if I move this code, right? If I move this code here, that's not going to make a difference. That's still going to throw up there, right? So here's the problem this poses, right? I'm trying to build an API that is agnostic of a UI, right? So that you as a viewer can go and build your own UI if you want to and put a nice UI, nice, you know, you can use whatever tools you want and you've got an API that you can work with. You can say, hey, I can log things, I can query things, I can get data. You know, it's a usable API that has some context that we all know about, right? So that if you have questions, people can answer those questions. And we can talk about the design, we can talk about things. So this is a really critical point, right? My backend code is being directly affected by my choice of client. Like if I do it this, if I run this, right? Now if this still fails, then I'm completely wrong and WASM's not my problem, right? So I'm fully happy to be wrong here, but let's go get my token. Oh, pants. Test at nowhere.com. Test. Application. Edit value. Copy. Why does that still have quotes in it? That bugs me. Right, that breaks. Okay. So let's keep running. So now let's go over here and paste that in there. If this still breaks, then that's fine. I'm wrong. Still breaking. Ah. So why would that do that? Why does that break when it's part of the... It's a stream, must be leave for work. You too, Apex. Thank you very much. Look forward to the streams. Hope we get back to it soon. Okay, so I'm wrong. So why does that fail? So it's not WASM related. That's what I've ruled out there because it's working in the API. So if it was WASM related, right, then I'd have a challenge because now I've got to talk about, okay, well, my API design shouldn't change for my clients because the client implementation, you know, that would be bad. So why does this fail? Ethan, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome. Why does this fail? And if I do, let's say, let's do another time zone. So one thing that is curious, right? I go to America -5 Eastern time. So that's Eastern Standard Time. Why do I get why do I get that as a okay. This is driving me crazy. So let's do this. Let's go back to the database. Let's put in our preferences, let's put Eastern Standard Time. Right? So now our preferences say something different. Let's run the application again and see if it still fails. Right? Because we validated that, we've pulled the ID directly from the time zone info. Okay. Now we get nothing. So let's select Toronto. We still get the same error. America, Toronto was not found. What is this ID then? So the question is, okay, what is in the UI, the list of time zones is not the same. So let's do that. Let's try this. Let's try. Do this. Get. Enumerable of tuple string, right? We don't need a consumption service. And we need that. Okay. Need that. Oh, that's that. Okay, so in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, yeah, that'll work. Time zones, order by. Why don't you like that? Argument type. Task from result. Types results. Okay. Time zones. Argument type. Ordered enumerable. It's not assignable to enumerable. Hold on. What is ordered enumerable, not just a subset of enumerable? I don't care. Time zones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this and I'm going to try and get that API, right? The reason being, I want to see what that actually returns. And then whether that returns different IDs. So if the client is getting different values, but again, I don't think that matters. I don't think that's actually going to be my problem. I think I'm digging there. What is that? API time zones. What? Why is it not found? What did I do wrong there? Get time zones. No, it's breaking and it's giving me an error, which is driving me nuts. So I want to try and I just wanted to see if the server, when the API returns values, if it behaves differently than Blazor. Yes. And in this case, America, New York. It doesn't know what America, New York is. It doesn't know what America, Toronto is. It's just breaking. And at first I thought it was WASM, because obviously the code compiled on the client is going to be different. Why is that not there now? Configure API / time zones. Oh, okay. Why? Why is that all empty? I'm just wondering if the time, because again, what we're seeing in here, when we do this one, is not the same as what we're seeing from the other side. So I want to see that it does return the same exact thing, and that this is just an interpretation or something. All right. I've not worked with these time zones in this way before. Normally I'm dealing with strings and just working off an existing list. So I just want to validate that I'm looking at the right things. Right, see the IDs there? are not the same. This list is not the same as is generated in Blazor. Fortunately, I am almost out of time. So, I dump this out. For each var tz in, yeah, we output right, but it does work. That's the problem. So if I do Eastern Standard Time there, right, I get -5. If I do America, New York, it still works. It doesn't fail. So if I do America, Toronto, or America, whatever, this is still accepting it. So I don't think that's the actual problem. ID tz.displayName tz.offset. Okay. Let's just run that and see what it looks like. He's doing that. But you can see this is not the same thing. But I don't understand why that would fail, being that I can actually make it work. So America, New York is a valid time zone ID, unless there's a way of doing it differently, right? Browser might be sandboxing that call and it's not showing the same entries. Yeah, so it's clearly not the same, right? It's not the same. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge. So I could feed it the list from the server, and get that, use that ID and see if that changes any behavior. I'm starting to believe it wouldn't necessarily change the behavior. So I do services, user service. I'm out of time. I can't really do this. Async task, IEnumerable. Time zone model. Right this second. Get time zones. Return. Oh, we need the token. Actually, you can make that anonymous. That doesn't really matter. We definitely don't need a user service around a user protection around that. For our time zone model, ID display name. And then in our preferences, we want to do preferences. User service get time zones. Oh, I can't do it that way. Private IEnumerable time zone model get time zones. Equals wait user service dot get time zones. I don't like doing this. This is not, this is not what I really want to do. Select ID equals time zone. And then this is going to be our time zones. Okay, so okay, that's fine. But that's not working, so awesome. Let's go over here. Water, drink water, database, preferences. Yeah. Yeah. So okay. Well, I gotta finish. I can't continue, unfortunately. So that's frustrating. Not really the way I wanted to leave it, but again, that's the type of development, right? It's the scrambling when you don't understand something, you want to fix something, but you don't know how to go and look up or what it is exactly going wrong there, right? So the time zone, I'm using the same classes, the same names, etc., but they're clearly developed. They're clearly producing different objects. But again, it still functions. So where is the disconnect there, right? What is the challenge? So if I make it work with this, if I make the server return the model, so I'm getting the exact same as the server, will that work all the time? I don't know. But we can only find out, right? What I'll do as well is I'll put a default on that column of UTC, so there'll always be a value. Because UTC is UTC. There's no, I can't see there being any difference there. So yeah, so that's water, drink water for today. If there's any questions, thoughts, opinions on this, you know, as always, you're more than welcome to check out the Discord. It's linked in the cards below. All my videos do go to YouTube. I stream on YouTube at the same time, but all the videos are there afterwards if you want to go and give them a look for past content, etc. Tomorrow I will be back on platform, so I'll be back on Agile Project Management. I'll be working on the planning items thing. I've got to do some prep for that today, but that will be my that will be continuing on tomorrow, and then we'll return back to water, drink water on Monday. As frustrating as that might be, to step away from it, I think is the best way of keeping this project valid, is that I'm not working on it all the time. So yeah, that's me. Have a great rest of your day. I don't have the time to raid out, so I'm just going to finish up here. He says, let me just check. I'm not going to raid into Fritz. Yeah, I'll tell you what, we're going to raid Fullbots, because Fullbots has started. Now, Fullbots is working on tutorial stuff. Fullbots is working on an awesome game. He's making a puzzle game. It's kind of like Factorio, not Factorio, like, he can do a way better job of describing it, but it is worth checking out and wishlisting on Steam. So let's go raid Fullbox. I'll hang out there for a bit as well. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you again all soon. Take care. Ending.